Hi there, folks. Right, thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Anthony Martin, and I'd like to go through our Let's Sway session with you today. So hopefully you found it along to the right session. We are going to be going through Microsoft Sway in the Office 365 suite and talking through really from start to finish how to put together a Sway that you can use then in your classroom or in your kind of working environments. Now, what we will do as part of this session is I'll give a little bit of a presentation, but also then go through a lot of the actual setup process, and we'll actually build some sways together. Hopefully you can then use that in your own lessons sort of going forward and developing something useful for your own environments, and also look at some ways of possibly saving time on some of the things you're doing as well. So to kickstart in terms of presentation, I'll just bring up a little video as well so you can see me alongside, so that you can see this is a live session and there's actually a human behind what we're talking through today. There we go. Hi there, folks. Okay, so as I said, today's session is all about Microsoft Sway. Hopefully it'll be a nice, relatively fun packed kind of session in looking at some different ways of doing some things. Now, first things first for me to mention before I sort of delve into any of the actual techie stuff and how to go about it, by taking part in today's session, you'll be able to also claim a Microsoft code at the end of it, because it's an entirely Microsoft-centric course and part of the education community. So we run this a lot at Exeter College. We use the education community quite heavily in our own training. So the codes we can put together at the end of that will be available on the last slide, which you'll be able to pick up and then use to redeem some points in the Microsoft Educator community. So if you've ever been to one of our sessions before, you'll understand some of the benefits behind this and some of the great training opportunities you've got within that platform as well. So do take advantage of it. It's certainly worthwhile, and there's some great sessions in amongst that that site as well. Okay, so last point I'm going to make before I jump into anything is just to reiterate that obviously the sessions we're doing here are part of the EdTech demonstration program that we're working with the DFE on. So also on the last slide, we'll give you an opportunity to further engage with us as well if you wish to. So if you would like to look at any additional support areas or any other ways that we can help you, your school or your college kind of engage with digital, then of course please do use those channels and let us know. And we'll cover that right at the end of the session as well. Okay, so enough of the backstory. Let's talk about Sway. Now, one of the main questions we get asked a lot is what is Sway? What's it for? I don't really understand its purpose. And I have to admit, actually, I was the same when I first encountered it as well. I kind of dismissed it. I put it to one side thinking, yeah, that's quite cool, but it's a little bit gimmicky. I couldn't really work out where it sat. I've very much changed my tune on that now. I've found some great ways of using this, and particularly with the kind of lockdown and pandemic aspects, there are some really cool ways that we can use Sway to develop some of those kind of missing bits and the joining fabric of our kind of teaching and learning environments. So we found it's really good for things like newsletters. It's really great for kind of follow along lesson plans or flipped learning lesson plans. So that's very much like the catch up sessions and the kind of the missed contents that might be sort of caught in some of those. And it's a really good way of quickly throwing together some lesson resources and materials when you really don't have a lot of time on your hands to do so. And then also it's a presentation, so it's something really that fits a lot of different categories, and that's kind of why I found it a little bit difficult to work out where it's at. But when you see what it can do, I think you'll be quite impressed. Off the back of this as well, you've got some analytics as well behind this, so you can look at some of your sways, see how many times they're being read, see how long people are spending engaging on them, see if people are just glancing or are they kind of making it to the bottom of your sway and interacting with the extra stuff. So that's a really useful insight to have as a teacher in particular, but maybe also as a marketing professional as well. If you are sharing out a newsletter via this platform, it gives you some very quick insights about how your sways and how your content is actually being used. We've got the ability within here to look at things like a timeline, so we can lay our content out in some very interesting ways or interact with it in some much more interesting ways than simply scrolling through page by page of a presentation. And we've got this idea of being able to create a digital textbook. So where we've got our handouts, where we've got those traditionally text-based or printed materials, you've now got the digital equivalent of that within Microsoft Sway, and in a way that you can fit more content on than perhaps you could in a PowerPoint presentation. So that's where it starts to take some of the business away from PowerPoint, but it's not intended to be a replacement for it. So please, I must stress that it's not a replacement for PowerPoint, but it is a really cool way that you can support and augment that that kind of presentation use you would have had before. What I really like from Sway is this ability to create a very visual, a very much self-paced presentation. So again, the flipped learning element is a perfect companion sort of for this type of technology. It works really, really well in that capacity. But also one of the other ones that it's really useful for is from the learner point of view. So where they perhaps face challenges creating content, they face challenges with their website design, or whether they have no website design skills whatsoever, but still need to maybe engage with things like WordPress, or to have created some kind of portfolio element to demonstrate their photography skills, for instance. There's lots of aspects like that this can do really well without having to have all that background knowledge. So it's great for professionals, it's great for teachers, but it's also great for students as well. And then, of course, from a lesson point of view and a planning point of view, it's a really nice way of just putting together a kind of a linear lesson plan, as it were. And you could design this in a way that allows you to add some timings to that, for instance, or to create a lesson plan for the week, or a lesson plan maybe for each day or each session, and keep it all in one area so that you know a topic is being covered in perhaps one single document. Okay, so those are some of the kind of highlight uses, and we are going to get onto demo. I just wanted to show a couple of slides really initially to get you through that. But these are some of the challenges that you can use Sway to help you overcome. So perhaps you don't have a school or college newsletter, or perhaps you don't get any inputs into it. If you do, maybe newsletters don't always display correctly. So you often get complaints about the way they're rendered or they're displayed on someone's device. Perhaps they're not received all the time, or they get blocked by a mail filter. So that's one of the common ones we see. Also, as you just mentioned, learners not being able to create blogs or websites for their portfolio work. How do they do that? Do you have to spend the time teaching them website design first before they can demonstrate their portfolio? Maybe that's not the best use of time. From your point of view, maybe as teachers, do you have the time to design complex looking guides? You want to make them look good, sure, but do you really have the time to put into all of that element of the design and the presentation point? Probably not necessarily, and I think certainly at the moment we're just looking for anything that can save us a few minutes at all. And then we've got things around accessibility, which is sort of kind of factored into this as well. And then also the ability to both use and benefit from stretch goals and differentiation alongside a standardized process. So often that differentiation and standardization piece are often at loggerheads with one another. However, in this kind of format, you can do that. You can create one Sway that caters for all, and actually have some different content on the page that's relevant to different people. So that makes it really quite useful. Okay, a few quick wins just to mention some of these. You can start from a template or an existing document. There's no prior design experience necessary, so that's a real big win for those who really have no design skills in terms of putting these things together. We already talked about lesson plans and handouts, and also then this great idea of being able to embed rich media and video content into your digital handout. Whereas maybe a paper-based handout, obviously that's entirely flat. The best you could have probably done is to include a QR code or a link on that to then engage somehow on the device. But now we've got something that is truly embedded. And presentations and looping presentations as well, so that you can set them to go round and round. Those are some really cool quick wins. And I'm just going to mention some additional info and limits here as well. So it's worth knowing, but I don't think any of you are going to be hitting these kind of limits. So there are some limits on the table on the right hand side. You can see the maximum number of kind of headings and paragraphs and images you can add to any sway. To be honest with you, I've not yet hit any one of those limits on anything I've put together. So I'd be quite surprised if you do find that yourselves. You can have up to 10 people working on a sway at once, and you can add passwords to sways as well, which creates quite an interesting use case. And I'm going to come on to that in a few minutes. Okay, so I've talked at you for a few minutes. How about we actually just jump straight in and let's have a look at sway. So if you bear with me a second, I'm going to quit sharing this screen and share another one. Okay, so in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier. What I wanted to show you first was effectively this. This is the how to sway. You can find this on the Microsoft website or on the Sway website. And I just wanted to demonstrate some of those kind of key things that you can do with the sway, as it's really quite useful. So you can see, first and foremost, on a page, whatever I've got on screen, if I resize my screen down, and hopefully this is going to manifest itself relatively well, the page is responsive, so it will instantly adapt to the type and the size of the screen that I've got available to me, and relay out all the content again as necessary. So that means it's good for mobile and desktop use, as well as using it on things like iPads and tablets. So let's have a look at what's in here. So we've got some imagery, and if you leave it long enough, you'll see there's a little bit of an effect against this, so it starts to zoom in and pan towards you. So it creates a little bit of interactive or engaging content on there. Obviously, we've got text. We've got the inclusion of pictures and images. We've got different styles that we can use. So you'll see here there's a whole panel of different styles. We've got the ability to then bring in images from various different sources. And as we carry on scrolling, you'll see more and more imagery come into play. We can use remix functions to save us a little bit more time on creating content. And then you've got sort of different portfolio kind of styles and images that you can display. So it gives you a few insights into that. So this sway is a really useful reference point for everyone in getting started. Okay, so as we scroll through that, you can see we start to get onto video content. We start to get onto different styles that you can employ within your presentations. And there we go. All right, so that's probably a lot of scrolling, a lot of insight, but as you can see, it's a fairly lengthy sway here to give you lots and lots of insights in the way you could use things, including one of my favorites, which is the rotating picture deck. Okay, so as you're looking through this, think about the different ways that you might be able to utilize that. Comparisons, in particular, sort of before and after pictures and images, which you can use to compare sort of different models or different planets or imagery. Slideshows, so you can scroll through or use the menu navigations for images. And then finally, one of the other things I really like about this is in the bottom right hand corner, you've got a section navigation button, which gives you a kind of timeline. So if you wanted to perhaps use this in a history lesson, you can have a timeline display like this and use that as your method of sharing the content out. But ultimately quite a useful facility to have. Okay, so that's what it looks like. How do you find it? How do you create one? How do you get started? So let's do that now. So I'm going to go back to the top. I'm going to go into my Office portal. If I were typing, would it help? So once I'm in Office, I'm going to go down and find the sway icon, which is the one just here. And so here I am in my sway. What I've got initially is something that shows me I can create a new sway from blank or from a document, or I can look at some of the things that I've created recently. or I can get some inspiration from featured sways and see what we can create there. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create one from something slightly different. So I want to create from a topic, just to give you an idea about how quickly you can get started with this. So if I go back up to create a new sway, there we go. Right, so now I'm in sway. This is the button I'm looking for at the top. I want to go back to effectively the home page. There we go. So when it says welcome to sway, this is the screen I really want to share with you, because this will show you all of your existing sways, and this is where you can see your analytics as well on who's been accessing them, in addition to being able to start from an existing template. And this is a really great way of getting started on something new with very little effort. So at the top here, you'll see 3 different buttons: create from new, which is entirely blank canvas, create from topic, and then create from an existing document. And I'll try and cover each of those 3. But the one I'm really interested in just for a minute to help get started is this one on starting from a topic. Okay, what it pops up with then is a Wikipedia powered search. Now, you may not like Wikipedia, but it gives you a framework to start from. So if we start on something, let's say Roman coins, for instance. So I type in the search, hit search to go. And here it comes back with a few different sort of aspects that I can pick, or different topics. So let's have a look. Yeah, Roman currency, that looks about right. And then create my outline. Okay, so that's taken about 15 or 20 seconds or so. What it's done for me though is it's gone away to Wikipedia, and in each of these tiles and cards, it's pulled in some starting blocks for me to actually use and take advantage of. When we're in the screen here, I can hit the play button at any time to come back to this and have a look at those designs. So if I hit play now, you'll see straight away, literally with very little effort whatsoever, I've now got something I can scroll through to give a useful kind of presentation piece of content. Okay, that's fine, but I don't like the design. I don't like the layout of it. I want to change it. So let's go back to edit. Okay, so first and foremost, maybe let's think about the design elements, okay? Now, what I would say to you is don't try and use this as a designer. If you try and use it as a designer, you'll get frustrated by wanting to place things in certain positions and wanting to use certain fonts and styles. That's a habit to get out of your head straight away. So what I would say is you then come into the style panel and pick something that's been pre-made, because it's going to be quite difficult for you to fully customize it in exactly the way you want. So start from that viewpoint. Let's say I'd like this to be vertical. Instead, I'd like to scroll down the screen. I'd like a different color scheme. So let's say purple background. And you see what it will do then is it would change these highlights on the titles. All the fonts and styles and so on will change on my presentation. And it literally is as simple as clicking a single button here. Okay, maybe some more fanciful designs with borders and so on, depending on what your subject area is. Maybe if it's art and design, something like this might be better. But choose one that fits. Choose one that fits your needs, or at least is as close to it as possible. And then you can start having a look at your content. So there's a design. I'm relatively happy with that. I can work with that. We'll go back into storyline now. And here I can then make any changes that I need to make to this text. So if I want to change any of the contents, then I can do so. If I want to add in new headings, again, I can put my new heading in here. Here I've got some ability to add in emphasis as well, so I can do a little bit of influencing the fonts, but not a massive amount, and that's absolutely fine with me. Then I've got the ability to add things like background. So do I want this as a big section with a background on it? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's have a look. So here, when I click on add a new image, it will then come up with a search. So Let's then search for just Roman as a general concept. Okay, let's take the Colosseum. That's probably a useful one. And also I can use this tick box at the top here whenever I'm searching for any images to pick out content that is Creative Commons only. So I'm making sure that I'm picking stuff that isn't protected by copyright. So I can quite confidently use this content. I'm going to add that in as my background. Okay, and you see it adds it here. And anytime you like, come back to your play button just to see what it looks like. So you see as we scroll, they've got the Roman coins, and now I've created a new heading with the Colosseum in the background of it. Okay. Back to edit then. So I've got my new heading. Let's add some different blocks underneath it to create some useful content. So under which I'm going to add a text block in. So this is where I add the extra bits of my story. And just to demonstrate, adding a few extra things into here. You can see what it looks like with some extra text. Maybe you'd like some of these to be bullet pointed, so you can add those in as well. And you've also got some influence over how big or small you want the text to be. So do you want to take up quite a large part of the page, larger fonts, or do you want something that's a bit more condensed? Okay, so there's some content. Next up, we go back down to this middle bar here and we look for the plus. So we get the plus between the groups and we can add in then something else. So here we're going to add in maybe a stack of images. And here what I can do is just click add content, just like I did the main image, and I'm going to add in a new image. It's kept our search that we had a few moments ago. So again, I'm just going to pick out some hopefully sort of Roman themes within here. But obviously the topic is meant to be currency, so I should be searching currency really. But let's just pick out something. I think you can get the idea of what I'm trying to do. And then click add. And you'll see it creates a card for each of these pictures I add in. I can add specialist captions onto them if I want to as well in this screen. And again, if we go and check what that looks like, you can see what it's done now is it's added the content as a stack alongside my text. And the reason it's done that is because it's thinking about grouping all the time on this site. So we can edit that, we can influence that. If we want to put this in a group on its own, then that's really easy to do. We just go back to our little green plus. We add in a group and it can be of whatever style you like, but maybe if we add automatic. And then it should treat this separately from the other one and treat it as a separate section. Okay. So some other things we can do. Obviously, we can add headings, we can add text, images, we can add stacks of content in here. Headings 1 and 2, so you can differentiate between sort of different segments of your document. But media, obviously pictures we've seen. I can also add in videos, or I can embed content from other sites as well. So I can add content from maybe different types of materials, so sways, forms. I can embed other things into here, or even upload a PDF file or something from my device as well. So if we say video, this one's nice and simple, so it's going to go away. Again, it brings up a video search. It looks for something, so I could search for something maybe on YouTube or a video here and see what I can find about Roman coins. And again, you may want to watch these through before you actually publish anything. I don't know what any of these will be like, but it does allow you to draw in the content then from those sources and click add. Okay, so there we've got one video. I can put a caption. So I don't know where it is. I probably need to go back and check that to make sure it's okay before I start playing it out. And I can also then influence again with this box the size of the video that appears on screen. So small one will be a little box in the corner of the screen. The mid-size one will take up generally in the middle of the section of the screen, and the larger one would then take up the full width of the page. Okay, so that gives one idea about how I can do that. The other way I can embed a video is to use an embed code. Okay, so this is something I could bring across from maybe from YouTube or somewhere else like that as well. But what I can do if I want to, and let's look at some collections I've already taken a tour of. So in Let's Sway, there should be a couple of YouTube videos in here. Sorry, they're unrelated to this because I was going to look at environmental science as a topic. But if we just pick out one of these YouTube videos, let's copy that link. Now I can just create a text box and simply paste in the link to my content in here. So if I paste that in, click on that and enter, then I've also embedded a YouTube link that people can use. Alternatively, I can grab the whole embed code and bring that across from YouTube as well. So if we have this same image or same video, let's open that in a new tab. Okay, I'll pause that so it doesn't play out. But if I take the embed code from here, share and find the embed, there we go. So if I copy that, I can then go back to my Sway, create a new embed, and just paste that code in. And then I've got an embedded YouTube video directly in the page with the link just above it if people want to use it manually. All right, so just to show what that looks like. So we've got our Roman currency, we've got our text we've added, we've got our image carousel aspect, and then we've got two videos that we pasted in here. So actually we've got the one that we copied in from our first video search. We've got the manually pasted YouTube link, and we've also got a directly reference YouTube link in here as well. So you can see how you can start to build up a kind of lesson or a learning object in here. Okay, so here's the rest of our topics, and if we'd done the same with those other areas, we could fill that in. Bearing in mind it's gone to Wikipedia, so it's pulled out all the links that it can find about references to start off with. Okay, so that's pretty useful. I think that's a nice start to a Sway. If I completed that and I'm happy with that, I can then share and send that out to my learners or to whoever this is, if it's a newsletter I'm putting together, which I can do via the share button, and then decide who's going to have access to this and how do I want to share it. So I can share it out via the link so that everyone can view it. I can also share a link out that people can edit if I want to collaborate with colleagues on this, or I can embed it somewhere else. And I've got a few other options around password, which I'll come back on to because I want to show you something quite cool. Okay, so there's a fairly basic Sway. Now, what's probably worth doing is thinking about using this in some other ways. So you've got your lesson. That's great. Here's a handout you can give to some people with some resources they can watch. Okay, what about those stretch goals we talked about? What about maybe the feedback aspect? So this is where I can start to do some clever stuff. If I scroll back down to the bottom of my Sway, so let's put it in place of this references section. So instead of references, or as well as references, let's say, we're going to add into here a new heading. So we probably ought to move this around. So sorry, I'll drag the previous text up to that section. We're adding a new heading in here called stretch goals. Okay, so for those who are getting ahead of it, maybe they're consuming a bit more content than my normal class, I can throw some stretch goals in here and things that extra learning that they could go on and learn. So if we go back and call up my pre-made links again, let's grab another video. So we've got a full episode of the water crisis on here from YouTube. Now, again, as I say, it's not the topic in question here. I should have probably done one on environmental science, but let's copy this embed code out again. Okay, so we're going to copy the embed code, everything on this page, go back to our stretch goals, click plus, media, embed, and then paste that into there. I'd like it to be bigger, so I want it to take up full screen. That's my stretch goal. Okay, so we've got stretch goals in here now. Great. One other thing we could do though is maybe if you want to add some form of assessment to this piece as well, so we could add a form into here just as easily. So again, in my list of content I've already prepared, let's have a look at one of my feedback forms. So this is an EdTech demo feedback form. Let's open that one up, copy the link. Because I'm not going to, actually, no, sorry, I want to embed this. Let's copy the full embed code. Okay. Fine, yeah, so sorry, it won't work from the copying the link. I do need to grab the full embed code. So again, back to my form, which I probably should have opened in a new tab. Let me open that one in a new tab instead. And I may need to capture this one as a full embed. So sorry, bear with me a second. I'm just going to go into the actual form itself. Apologies for that, folks. Right, let's quickly capture here. So again, in my share, as I would with forms normally, I can get an embed code, which is this one. Again, the same kind of icon. Copy that content. Go back to my sway that I'm putting together. Come back down to the bottom. And I've just put this as a survey, but you could have created a forms quiz. So here I'm going to add in a new embed as a forms quiz. Okay, so you can see it's added something in there, a little embed aspect. It's probably worth me adding in a new heading for this one and then dragging that back down into that same section. So then I can put quiz and test your knowledge. Okay, so let's close that. Let's go back to play and see what this looks like at the bottom now. So again, we've got all of our core lesson content. Coming down to the bottom, then we've got our stretch goal. So this is the video we want people to do, and I could just as easily add some text in here to offer some support around what that's about. And then a quiz to test your knowledge. Here I've got an embedded form that people can fill in, or it could just as easily be a quiz. And again, remember when we're editing that content on the kind of editor screen, I can always increase the size of this if I need to. And that's really easy to do. So if I want it to be bigger than it is at the moment, just go back to edit, go to my quiz section, and then increase the size there using the sort of button here for the 3 parts. Okay, and that's putting together a very basic kind of lesson idea really for a lesson plan or for a sort of lesson activity handout. Okay, so that's our kind of one way of using it. Just some other ways to share out with you so that you've got some useful aspects here. So we talked about creating from a topic, which is what we've just done. I can, if I feel like it, create entirely from scratch, which will give me something much more like this. So it's literally just a blank starting block and I have to put in everything in here. So it's a much slower way of getting started, but it does mean you have probably the most control over what sections are in there and how it goes together. I tend to prefer, when I'm creating a new one, to use an existing template. So in this section for templates, I can see different kinds of contents that I could create. So is it a blog? Is it a newsletter? Is it a portfolio, for instance? And start with something that already exists. CVs, for instance, I've actually used this previously in terms of role applications and that kind of thing. So using Sway for a supporting statement in a CV, perhaps. You could use it very easily for photo portfolios and blogs, or public announcements, which we tend to use it for as well. Also pre-existing kind of lessons that are inspired by this, so you can use some of those. So if we pick another new one, let's maybe say we're going to go with a newsletter. Let's start with a newsletter. So again, you can come in, you can change any of these images. You can see what it looks like in preview. Does that fit what you're trying to achieve? If it does, if it looks roughly how you want to start off and how you want your newsletter to look, use it as a template, start from it. You know, it saves you a little bit of time in putting something together. So that's one other way you can do this. Oops, sorry, let's go back to right. Okay, so yeah, let's go back to our Sway. So it's probably worth me showing you maybe some of the stuff that we've created using this. So we've looked at some blank stuff. We've looked at how you can create them. And if you want to go through any of that, please do feel free to ask any questions and I'll pick those up as we go along. But let's have a look at some of the ones that have been put together in the college here. We've got one called Pancakes, which is nearly pretty good timing. And in Pancakes, this is one that's being designed as a handout for students, as a recipe guide for them on their either on their cookery course or part of their catering courses. So it actually includes the recipes and it gives a little bit of insight into it. It also has then instructional videos on this as well as to how to make and bake effectively with that. And there's some further then additional activities that come into this, and then looking at sort of how you can stretch that out with maybe making it a fine dining experience with these kind of things. So this is one that's been put together by one of our tutors. He gives some great ideas, and you can see how the videos are then embedded into this, that students can just play along. And also, because of course it's a responsive page as well, we can use this on our mobile devices. So a student can access this on their mobile phone and follow along, and they could just as easily do that in a lesson with you as well as at home while they're learning remotely at the moment. So that's one possibility. Other ways we've looked at this, again, we've got some similar kind of ones with the same kind of aspect. Maybe we could put together something on the trenches, or we've done one as a laptop choosing guide. So how to choose a laptop. This has been part of our EdTech demo support. So we put together a very quick guide, or I say very quick, there's a little bit of content in here, but to help parents in particular look at remote devices, to give some insights about what should you look for when you're buying one, setting budgets, looking at specs, that kind of thing. So we can create it in a little bit easier to consume kind of layout. But we've also then gone through kind of a picture tour of what the devices look like and a little bit of sort of supporting info about them as well. So it's a bit like a review crossed with a newsletter, again, crossed with a blog, crossed with a support article. So you can see how Sway starts to become very much that blended sort of learning tool. And as we go on, the same kind of concept, but it's just something that we thought would be quite useful for our parents and students. Other ones we've done in the past, if I have a look for all of my Sways. Now, this one's quite interesting. So our Art of the Possible Word document is one that is created from a Word template. So this is starting from a document and turning it into a Sway. So let me show you what it looks like, and then I can show you how we create it. So from an editing point of view, it looks like this. These are all of my cards. These are all my sections. Doesn't look like much when I hit play. Here's the kind of document or the presentation that's put together. So I've put this one more as a presentation, and I can use then the slide left and right options to go through it. So now it becomes a little bit more like a presentation that I can run through, but I can add some more interactive content in here. So you see, it shows a way that I could go through my presentation in something a bit different from PowerPoint if you wanted to do that. Okay, so that's kind of one way of looking at it. We've got another way, again, if I look at all of my sways again. I think I picked this one previously, so let's have a look at that one. Oh no, sorry, same one again. Sorry, apologies for that. I've done a few examples of the same one, so just to show it can be used differently. But if I want to change it, fine. Okay, let's come along. Let's have a look at that. Edit it. I'm going to look at the design. Going to look at the styles, and then I'm going to switch it back to right. We don't want slides. We want vertical. I don't like the color scheme. I'd like to make it purple again. Or I want to entirely change that kind of background piece. There we go, something a bit more formal. Great. Play that and see what it looks like instead. So there we go. With just a few clicks, you can see how you can really dynamically change it into something entirely different. And that gives some idea about this. So you can see on this document, we've got some slides, we've got some text, we've got some smart art stuff being included on a nice handy guide. And to create it was really, really easy. All I did, I actually did it from Word online, but you can do it from Sway here. So if I go back to Sway, you'll see you can start from a document at the top. I actually did mine the other way around. So I started from Word. And if I find my Art of the Possible demo, so when that's loaded up, what you should be able to see, so this is a series of screenshots and text from a presentation I've given before. You can see it's just a standard Word document, nothing fancy about it whatsoever, other than the fact that I've included headings, and that's the important part. Is as long as you've got headings, heading 1, 2, and 3 in your document, everything else will work around that. To convert it, really nice and simple, go to File, and then Transform. So this is on the web version. Go to File and then Transform. Transform to a web page. It's going to ask me the same kind of design questions. You know, how would I like this to look? So let's just go with something basic for the time being. And you can see it gives you a preview then of what it will look like on a mobile device versus what it will look like on a desktop. Cool, brilliant, transform. So we'll just give that a couple of seconds to load up. I think really if it takes you any more than 30 seconds, I'd be surprised. So within about 30 seconds, here we go. Here's my sway. That's been created from a Word document with, again, no design input whatsoever from me, no styling guidance really from me. It's just been put together really quickly, really simply, and really easily. And that I think is really, really powerful. So it means you can convert your old documents into something much more usable, much more friendly. Go back in, edit this, add a form at the end for a quiz or an assessment, add a stretch goal into the bottom of it if you wish to, with 10 links to different YouTube videos. So there's lots of ways you can enhance this then. And then even better, some of the other things that you can do, obviously we've talked about editing this and sort of sharing it out with people to collaborate on. But I talked about one of those cool things I wanted to show you, and I'll cover this before we go, which is when we go to share, you've got some extra options in here as well. So you can use a visual link, so it will create a QR code for you, which is quite handy if you just want to copy that. So you can copy that out. Sorry, as a visual link. Sorry, there is also a QR capability. Capture the embed link. But under here, where you've got this section here, require a password to view or edit this sway. Okay, so create a password required by everybody. So that means it's one to be able to view it. So think of it this way. You're trying to drive some engagement in your classrooms. You're trying to create a little bit more learner interaction. Maybe you're talking about historic lessons, or you're talking about passwords, or perhaps it's a session about crime or problem solving. You could have a top secret password for this and create a bit like a, I don't want to use sort of offensive language, but sort of murder trail kind of, an escape room, those kind of things, and bring that into here just by simply adding a password to it that someone has to guess from the previous sway to move on through. So it's like solve the clues, use the password, move to the next one. And that's something you could do really easily just by adding this onto here, and it locks that sway down for everybody until they guess the right password. Just a thought of one way you could use that. So I hope that gives a bit of an insight into kind of what you can and what you could do with sway. Clearly it's quite a powerful tool. So I'm just going to go and have a look to see if there are any questions from you guys as well while we're going through this. And I'll see if I can answer these for you. So let's. So we've had some questions around accessibility, and that's really important. Yes, this does have accessibility features built into it. So one of the great things about Sway is you've got this accessibility checker, which as a designer, it allows you to go through and see how accessible the content you've put together is. It also has accessibility view as well. So that allows you to see it from an accessible point of view, which trims out all the backgrounding, styling, the colors and all those kind of things as well, and makes it a lot easier to use. Don't forget that you could use this with Microsoft Edge as your browser in particular, which then lets you bring in some of those additional tools like Immersive Reader to make it even easier to engage with. So if you look at Read Aloud, for instance, built into the browser, that's a useful one to sort of have that ability there, so you can have it read back to you, or use the other accessibility features built into Edge as well. So that's quite useful to know. Bear with me, sorry, let's go back to edit. So yeah, that's the accessibility side. In terms of the accessibility checker, when we look at accessibility checker, this will analyze everything and look at all of our texts and our pictures. So here, for instance, you can see there are 7 issues with what I put together because I haven't filled in the alternate text, which I should do. So that's really bad of me for not doing. So I can do that. Or as an important piece here, you don't necessarily need to tag things if they're not relevant for tagging. So if they have no content value and they are purely decorative, you can tick the box to mark them as decorative as well in here, so that they don't confuse anyone with screen reader technology. All right, so hopefully that helps there. Another question we've had is about Sway on Apple products. So can someone open a Sway if they don't actually have Sway on the device? Yes, absolutely. You don't need the Sway app. Sway is just a web service. So everything I do in Sway is done online through the web browser. You don't need to use anything specific for that. It's purely web-based. So it works on anything that has a browser. So you can view and you can create Sways on an iPad, on a mobile phone, on a desktop PC, or if you really felt like it, you could do it on your Xbox or TV at home as well, because they're web browser technologies. So yes, that one is possible. Okay, so yeah, really interesting question here on how do PowerPoint and Sways diverge in their purpose of uses. So hopefully we did cover a little of that at the start, but we haven't dwelled on it in too much detail. So a PowerPoint is more your traditional stood in the front of class type lesson. It's something that's more formalized and is often led by you as a teacher in the class. A sway I look at as much more self-consuming. So it's something that you would act on yourself. So it's a self-paced tool, I think, much more. It's something that I would use for blended learning a lot more, and I would use because in one, say if I did it in a presentation, my stretch goals become more difficult at the end of it, and engaging with learners through maybe different pathways or supported content means I have to display it out in the presentation and make a point of it. Whereas if I put it in a sway, I could do my main presentation and I could say, right, class, your materials are available in sway as well. All the videos we've watched today are embedded in there, and instead of having to share out the PowerPoint, I share out the sway instead, knowing that at the end of the sway is a quiz that I can assess people's knowledge on, and also there are 10 stretch goals for those who are really going all out and consume the content quicker than maybe the rest of the class. But that's how I would probably tend to use them differently. Also, not forgetting, obviously, sway is much more than a presentation. So it's that ability to use it as a newsletter. Maybe that's out to parents. Maybe it's a whole college newsletter or a school newsletter. But it's a really good way of embedding lots of different types of content. So video, rich media, or feedback forms, all in one place. So those are the kind of different use cases, I think. Next up, so I've got a question: can you convert a sway from convert to a sway from a PowerPoint? Good question. I've not actually tried. It would make sense that you can. I've not seen that you can, but you could very easily export all the slides that you've got as a picture and then import them really easily back into sway again, or export your full PowerPoint into, say, something like Word, and then kind of make it a two-stage process. So I think that would be how you go about it. I don't think there's a direct button to do that at the moment. So hopefully that answers your question there. We can check that, I suppose, while I'm on screen here. I load up my PowerPoint. So I'm looking at PowerPoint desktop at the moment. Sorry, it's just behind the screens on this one. I'm just going to check what I can export to. Word documents, and then what I would do is I take that Word document and push it into sway. That would be my approach there. Okay, some other questions. Can you add voiceover recordings to sway? Yes, you could pre-record something and add it to it. There's no way of recording directly into a sway at the minute, but you could certainly do that by sort of adding pre-recorded audio or video onto there. Okay, next question up. Can you save a sway to a document, i.e. on your R drive or a desktop drive of the computer? Yes, you can. Yes, you can absolutely do that. So just as you can import the sway, a document into sway, you can export your sway back into a document. So to do that, go to the little three dots in the top corner, export, and then you can choose which format you want. Do you want it in Word, PDF, and you choose between those, and it will export it back into it again. It's probably worth also mentioning just very quickly in terms of some of those other options you can do in here. You can set the language from the default on your presentation as well. And you can also switch it to right to left layout if that's something that needs catering for with different languages. You can also set whether people can duplicate or copy sways, and also whether people can change the layout of your sway. So if you want it to stay in a specific view, you can turn that functionality off. Also, you might want to turn off the Made by Microsoft Sway buttons at the bottom if you'd rather not have those appearing. So you can do that as well. Okay, so yep, you can do lots of things there. With that, just see if there are any more questions from you folks as well. I think we're getting close to the end of these. So do you need a Sway web account? No, there is a free version, which you can use with any Outlook.com or Office 365 accounts or personal 365 accounts, or indeed your Microsoft Office 365 account from your college or school as well. So you can use any of those approaches. Just bear in mind that the lesser versions, or the non-paid for versions, or the ones that are just included for free, I should say, are a little bit limited on how much content you can put in them. But there were still pretty decent limits, and you should be able to get some decent content out with them. So next up, font sizes and content there. So yes, you can. So the question was, what is the largest text size you can access for the main body of text, and is there a choice of fonts? There isn't so much a choice of fonts. It's really down to those styles. Your font sizes are really governed by what you do with your titling. So when you're creating your content, you have the choice between the title, obviously, and then you have heading 1, and then you have heading 2, which is in the text. So just to show you what that looks like, heading 1, heading 2. Apologies for my spelling. Play that. So here's our title across the top. Then we have our heading 1, and then we have our badly spelt, sorry, heading 2 just coming in there. In terms of sizing for that, it's not so much driven by font sizes. I think it's really down to accessibility settings and being able to use the screen, the browser kind of, I suppose, properly in a sense. So you can use things like zoom in, zoom out functionality of a browser to influence some of that. And that would probably tend to be the approach for that. As I say, it's not intended for people who want to design everything. That might be a traditional PDF or another tool, I would say. This is really to throw together great looking guides really quickly, I think is the main intended purpose here. And I think I've covered most of the questions that you had there, but I'll hang around for a few minutes. Do please pop any additional ones you have. What I will do while I'm on the last part of my sort of slide as well is just share out with you my kind of finishing slide, just so that you've got, there we go. So we've done through the Sway aspects. I'll just give you some takeaways, which I think are quite useful to know. So ways we can use Sway, just to recap on that, are student portfolios. They're really good for that. They're great for newsletters, and also for newsletters that you want to tweak after you've sent them. So if you publish one, you can change the content afterwards and kind of, you know, reclaim that or repurpose it, but people have already got the link. Lesson plans obviously is a great way of using these. Do remember, obviously, you can create from either a topic or from a template. And just an extra bit of functionality like adding a password in for something like a code cracker or creating a much more interactive guide. So those are some of my takeaways. I'll leave my contact details up on screen for you. So thank you very much for taking the time, everyone, to come along to the session today. I hope it's been useful. I hope you've caught a few glimpses of how to use Sway in different ways. There is, as I said right at the start, if you want to claim some points for coming along to today's session, there is a MEC code there that you can claim listed at the top. And then I've got a few links for you. We'd love to hear your feedback on anything from today. So please feel free to use the feedback link or the QR code on screen. I've also included a link to what's called a PID. So those of you who are taking part through the EdTech demo program, if you're a school or college, it will be really helpful to us, and it would allow us to continue what we're doing as part of this program. If you could fill in one of those project documents for us, it acts as a little bit of a survey to tell us a bit about your school or college and how far you're getting with digital, and also acts as a way that you can engage with us further if you want any additional support or guidance. And then finally, the last link I put on screen there is just really, if you have any other questions at all about the EdTech demo program, you can find out all you need to starting from our page there on the portal. But thank you all once again for taking part today. As I say, I'll hang around for a little bit just to see if there are any further questions, but otherwise, enjoy the rest of your evening.